So for decades, personal finance has taught us one thing, which is to save more money and spend less, and that delaying gratification is better than instant gratification. And then came the FIRE movement that I'm personally very interested in and obsessed with, but in recent times I've been doing some thinking and looking at how our world is progressing right now. And things are changing really quickly as well. Cost of living is rising faster than ever, and a new narrative is emerging which begs the question, is saving still noble or is it shrinking people? And in the last couple of years, we see content about saving X amount by X age. And a lot of people are talking about those magical numbers that you have. But back in our parents' time, this was really applicable for them because climbing the career ladder was something that everybody strived for, and it made a lot of sense because everyone had stable careers for 30 to 40 years of their life.
Impossible.
Even for my mom, she's been in her current company for more than 35 years, and that's almost my age, and it's a badge that she proudly wears. And me, on the other hand, I'm probably on my 5th or my 6th job.
I also like to live dangerously.
So back in our parents' time, properties were relatively cheaper at 1.8 to maybe 2 times your annual income. And fast forward to 2026, this number has doubled while salary have not. Which is why the narrative of whether saving for a house is something to even think about. And if you take a step deeper, looking through the lens of an average Gen Z worker or a young millennial, there are 3 main drivers here that is causing this shift in thinking. So the first one is that asset inflation is faster than wage growth. So the median salaries in Singapore haven't grown significantly, but the prices of assets like property have been on an upward trend, and in the early 1990s, housing prices were only 2 times of the household income for a HDB flat, but today it's 4 to 5 times of a household income for a HDB flat, and for a private property like a condominium, that's gonna be 13 to 15 times your annual income. So now imagine someone earning around 5,500 or the median income in Singapore and hearing those words, just save more and then you can buy your house. What plays out in that person's mind is not the angle of buying a house, but are things like the 5-digit down payment that you have to do, that 25 to 30 years of mortgage, the interest rates that are spiking and crashing at any given moment, the buyer's stamp duty, and the high renovation costs. So I myself also felt the same when I was getting my flat. And all the effort I go through to earn my salary, a large proportion of it goes into that down payment for the property, which makes me feel like I'm always playing catch up trying to afford a place of my own. And coupled with the increase of cost of living, things like insurance premiums, your food, your transportation, your groceries, living as a young adult in Singapore can be quite a challenging task.
That makes no fucking sense.
And especially with shrinkflation right now, where we get less of something, but we are paying the same prices or more. So the second driver here is delayed gratification fatigue. So before 2020, the narrative that people had was work hard now, retire later, and enjoy life at 60. But when COVID struck, people's jobs disappeared overnight. Businesses collapsed, travel shut down, health became very uncertain, and people lost friends and family overnight. And when such catastrophe occurs, the future doesn't seem guaranteed, which then alters us psychologically. So for the average Singaporean worker, the mindset changed from I will travel after retirement to I will go to Japan for that ski trip this year. And instead of I'll only enjoy XYZ when I hit XX net worth, it becomes I don't want my entire 20s or 30s to be just spreadsheets. And this also alters the way we start spending our money. So things like travel, experiences, dining, and hobbies, these are no longer expenses, but they've become a form of social bonding, a form of stress relief, mental health maintenance, and in some ways, it also becomes our identity. And this brings me to the last driver, which is identity-based finance. So for many Singaporeans today, basic survival is relatively stable. We don't have to save to avoid a famine or a drought, which can be life-altering, and more often than not, we are saving for upgrades, for freedom, and for optionality. So for the older generation, spending was mainly very functional, meaning there was a logical reason to spending money. So for example, like buying a house, it gives you stability, buying a car, which gives you transportation, and saving because it gives us financial security. So money to them was about safety and status through assets. And hence we see a lot of content about you should have 100,000 by 30 or things like that. And because reaching that magic number becomes like a milestone and it kind of puts you above the average of the population. But for younger generations, especially the younger millennials and the Gen Zs, spending doesn't carry a logic behind it, but it becomes more of a communication of who you are. So for example, back in the late 1990s to 2000s, your spending wasn't broadcasted or shown publicly to people. Chances are it's only shown during a family gathering where your parents took out a photo album showing the last couple of holidays that you guys went on. But today, your Bali trip is on Instagram, your omakase dinner is on TikTok, your gym or your gym progress is on stories, and your wardrobe is curated from an online platform. And this doesn't mean it's a fake life, but it's a more visible life. And with increased visibility, signaling increases as well. And if one was to save aggressively, this could mean or be seen as becoming invisible because you stop appearing at gatherings just to save money, or you're not participating in a certain activity because you have hit your monthly budget. And in some way, it makes you feel small or even feel as though your social presence is shrinking as well. But this doesn't have to be that way because there's a better model that kind of works, and it's called earn and expand, and this consists of 4 main pillars. So the first pillar is to find ways to increase your earning capacity yearly. So instead of obsessing over cutting out your $5 morning lattes, the question you should ask yourself is, how do I increase my income by 10 to 20% over the next 3 years? Because with more income growth, it gives you more breathing room to expand and to do more things. So the second pillar is to automate baseline investing. So this pillar is something that I'm really passionate about, and I have covered many different tools that you can use to automate your investing so you don't have to worry about your money while you focus on work. So basically what you want to do for this pillar is to let the compounding interest do its job while you live your life carefree. So the third pillar here is to define high joy categories. So what you want to do here is to ask yourself, what truly makes you happy? Is it at 1 to 2 trips per year to Japan? Is it about having a nice meal once a quarter at your favorite restaurant? Is it hitting the gym 2 to 3 times a week? Or just having the latest tech that you can afford? So ideally, you should pick one of these and cut everything else. And what you want to achieve here is to have intentional spending that will fulfill your heart and soul, and not reckless spending just because you're stressed. So the fourth pillar is to track your net worth quietly. So abundance is built and not declared. So in some way, you don't have to let the world know that you have hit your personal finance milestone. You don't really need people to validate it as well. Because real wealth is compounded in silence, and once you start building in silence and ignoring the noise, you are shifting from building security to curating perception. So at the end of the day, the world has changed so much, and these are just some of my observations so far, and I might be wrong, but something that I'm very sure of is that it isn't wrong to question old money rules as well, because the world that we live in is vastly different from how it was 10 years ago. So something to take away is that saving money shouldn't shrink your life or your lifestyle, but spending without intention wouldn't expand it as well. And the real flex here is building abundance without financial delusion, which brings your mindset from saving and shrinking to earning and expanding.